We have the club open in Adobe Camera Raw. And the first thing we want to do is, of course, always prepare the file to be processed. In this case, it's a black and white file. Color is really not going to be an issue, but just to keep standard, we're going to go ahead and go to our profile. It's not really going to change our color because we're going to take all the color out of this. There's no color in the metal, so even a slight tint of color for me is going to sometimes pick up a little bit in the CMYK. So we're going to start on our first tab, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull saturation and vibrance down. That'll keep our metal very, very clean, very, very neutral. Now let's double check our numbers. We can see 235, 240, perfect numbers in here. Because we did such a good job on getting the exposure right and took all that time on the set, there's almost nothing we really have to do here. I may just to see if I was going to check exposure, I could hold down my Option key, the Alt key on the PC, and you can see as I move my exposure up, you can see these would be areas that would be over 255. Of course, we don't want that. We'll come back down to where we were, right in there, and I want to say 240, even to stay exactly where we shot, right at 0. And then on the black side, if we're looking in here, 20, perfect, right in the 20s. If we go any darker than that, our black is going to look like black felt. It's not going to have any texture in there, any grain, so we really are okay there. We could pop up a little bit of contrast, just a touch black, and I think we can open up our fill just a little bit. Let's see if that opens up our metal just a little bit. Make sure we don't go too high. Still perfect, 241. So I'm liking that. Let's double check our sharpness. I've got my standard sharpness set the way I like it, 85 with a 1 pixel radius, detail masking. Now to double, we're pretty much double check everything. We're good here. Let's go ahead and open up our image. Now, I'm going to go ahead and open my layers panel, and first things first, duplicate the layer because we're going to do some extensive retouching and cleanup on this, and I want to be able to always go back and have a safety layer. I don't want to work on the original layer, so I'm going to work on a backup copy of that layer. I think the very first thing we should do is get this guy cut out. Obviously we have a lot of dirt and some cleanup to do, but let's get this guy cut out of the background. I'm going to pick my pen tool. I'm going to double check my tools. I'm going to make sure it's a pen tool. I'm going to check that we have the auto add and delete checked. I want to say that we have the rubber band checked, and not the first, not the second, not the third, but the fourth box here. This way, if we ever have to cut anything in any holes in here, they will count. I like to start and do my paths the same way every time. So for me, it's just personal. I start at 12 o'clock and work my way around. Let's go ahead and close this down for a second so we can see well. And when I'm working with with a tool, I don't need to have any of these other tools open. So I'm just going to hit my tab key and close off my tools for me so I get a nice clean screen. I'm going to zoom in a little closer, start very close. There's no use to work far away. And whenever I lay my first point down, I don't pull or drag it. I just lay one dot down. That way you can see it's one solid dot. And I'm also going to try to cut just a slightly inside the edge of the club. So as I find my next spot, I'm going to click and drag, and I'm watching where I'm coming from, but at the same time I'm also watching where I'm going. It's sort of like playing pool. You sort of like you're setting yourself up for the next shot. It's like chess, same thing in chess. I'm going to click and pull, come down here, click and pull. And where you actually click and pull from comes from experience. Obviously, after you do 100 paths, you're going to be better than after you've done 10. When you've done several hundred, you're going to be better again. When you've done a couple thousand, you're going to have a whole new attitude about the pen tool, which I've always learned and always felt that it is one of the most powerful tools in Photoshop, especially for selections. I really love the pen tool. And a lot of people feel, oh, I could use the magic wand or I could use the lasso tool, but it is not the same. Got a few little spots here from the chip here. Going to come down in here, clean edge. We've fallen out of focus a little bit, but that's not going to hurt us at all. By the time we get this set up, we're going to see that we're clean. Got a lot of little dirt in here. You can always see that when you do the white shots on a white background. Click, and you notice when I change directions, I don't drag it. I just sort of put one point down, click and drag, come up the curve, click. I'm not going to even need the curve here. Click and drag. Lots of small little moves. Here we go. We're coming up here. click and drag, and then we put a solid click here. We're going to change directions. We're coming down this way. We're just staying just a fraction on the inside because I want to shave off. I'm shaping it. I'm cutting off that edge, giving myself a very, very clean edge. You can cheat a little bit when you're doing paths just by coming in the edge just a little bit. Now here we got a curve. I'm going to come to the center of the curve, click, and pull. I'm watching where I'm coming from, but I'm also setting myself up so I have the perfect curve already set. Click and pull. Now you notice here I'm a little bit off, so I'll hold my Option key or Alt on the PC, and I'm just going to move just this one side. Doesn't move both sides, just the one side. Readjust that curve with the Bezier curve control. Click and pull. Keep coming around. Click and pull. Alright, here we go. We're coming around the corner. I see we have a problem right here, so I'm going to go back to my Option key and pull that just a little bit to kind of tighten that up a little bit more. And if I have to move a point, I hold down my Command key, and that's the Control key in the PC, and I can actually move that whole point a little bit and adjust it a little bit. Some people like to go around the path, do very loosely the first time and then come back around a second time and adjust it. I don't like to go around the same real estate twice, so I find it much easier to just come around. See, definitely need to clean the chip on this camera a little bit here. And coming around. And we come around at the end, you'll see a little circle. Boom, and that closes it off. Now I'll bring up my tools again, and we go to the path panel, and we see that we have a work path. I double click on that, and that brings up save path as path 1. Hit OK. So now we have a true path. Now from here, we'll go back down to full size. I'll hold down my Command key, Control key on the PC, and click right on the icon, and that turns us into a selection. Now, there's no such thing as a selection that isn't slightly feathered just a little bit. So I'm going to go into a selection tool, and I can see right here, we'll go into the Marquee tool, and we can see Refine Edge. Bring that up, and you can see how I have my options set as the color indicates selected area in my quick mask options. So from here I can see the edge. If you go in really close, I like the quick mask option because I like seeing the red. I'm used to working with film in the old days with Codalith, so it makes me feel quite at home, like I'm in the darkroom. And we're going to put a 3/10. This is just a simple 3/10 of a pixel feather. I know that sounds like such a little thing, but it is truly the difference between 3/10. It just gives a slight, a very, very slight alias edge to that. And you can see if I go to quick mask, you can see I can pull that up. But what that's going to do is give me a very, very slight transition to my selection. You don't want to have something look like it's a razor blade, because if you look at transitional edges, let's just go right in here, you can see how even on the type it goes from black to lighter gray to light gray to chrome. It doesn't just jump black to chrome. There's a transition going on in here. Okay, so with that in mind, let's float that off the background. I will do a Command J or Control J to lift that off. We go back, we'll close this off, go back to our layers. We can see now we have this guy floating on its own layer, which is a good thing. Okay, now, first thing is let's put a white background on here to see just how well the chrome separates off the white background. So I think what I'll do is right above the background layer, I'll just do a new layer, and we will go Edit Fill, and we'll just use the background color, which is white, and hit OK. And now you can see how we have a nice clean edge. It doesn't have any place where the club is disappearing into the background. So I'm liking what I see so far. The only thing that's really wrong with this thing is we have a lot of cleanup. So we have lots of options here. We could use the cloning tool. We can use the spot healing tool. Let's try first thing just simply using the spot healing tool. We'll go in really close, and we'll start using with the content aware setting and using a brush. Now let's double check. We're going to use in this case a pretty hard brush because we're going to just basically go in there, and as long as we're staying real close to the areas. We got to make sure we're on the right background first. Let's get to the right layer. And as we start cloning in here, we're going to start working our way. And this is going to pick up some nice chrome. Let's just see how this looks first, and see if we have any kind of smudgy look to it, which is not going to be good for us if it does. If it starts to get smudgy on us, I want to use the cloning tool. And right now, so far, it's not looking too bad. So we can go in here, of course, and start taking out all these little dots and little defects on the club. A couple of these things are little spots on the chip. Let's clean it up nice. Now, if we're not getting enough black in here, we're probably going to go in here and do a little burning and dodging. I want to just go in here and clean up these bad areas right in here. Now, this area I would not want to use the spot healing tool. I'm going to go to my cloning tool and go in pretty close and pick where I'm going to sample from. So in this case, I want to check my brush. I'm going to use a softer brush, and I'm going to check my brush settings. And this is what I don't like. I don't want to have it start with a point and then get wider as I press. So I'm going to take off my shape dynamics. I want to start with a brush that works the same size all the way through, and I'm going to use my flow to control it. I like a full opacity, which means the longer I hold down the brush, as long as I hold the brush down, it'll be coming out at 100% opacity. But the constriction of so let's call it the paint floating out of the airbrush, will be very, very slow by having a very, very low flow. So I'm going to sample here and just start bringing that area up in here. Sample, constantly resampling. Let's see if you can clean this little corner up, because it's not a pretty sight right in here. We're just sampling it from different areas. I got to sample from the same sort of tonal range that I want to make sure resample and then clone. Sample, clone, sample, clone, sample, clone. That's looking good there. Now let's go back to our spot healing tool, make a small brush, and we're just going to real quickly go around here and start taking out all these little defects. And if you got about, you're going to have to put a good 10 or 15 minutes into something like this to make it really super quality oriented, because remember, there's going to be a top sales team group of people looking at this club. They know what it looks like. They're going to want it to look as good as it can possibly be. They realize that it's usually a prototype sample. A lot of times it's just not a good sample. It's been handled by several people. Hopefully nobody went out and played golf with this thing before I shot it, but it's not been uncommon for something to have rust on it, to have fingerprints that are embedded into the metal because of the oil that people handle. So there's all kinds of things that'll make this product look poor. So I'm just constantly going in here and cleaning up the little defects in here. A lot better already. I like what's going on. It's a little dull overall, so I'm going to think about maybe using a dodging tool. Now I can make a burn and dodge layer, which is kind of a cool thing, or I can just use the burning tool. In this case, it's so simplified. Let's just do a dodging tool. So I'm going to pick the dodge tool, and we're going to pick highlights very, very slight. I'm going to pick like just 2%. Again, a large, very, very soft brush, very slight. And let's just come in here and let's just start dodging it a little bit. Let's see what happens here. There we go. We're brightening it up just a little bit. There we go. Just ever so slightly. You can see it's just getting a little more chrome. Just shaping it a little bit in here. You can see it brightening up right in here. Just attacking the highlights a little bit. Yeah, it's starting to get a nice shape to it here. The key thing with you think round things need to look round, and by shaping it. Now I like the blacks are a little bit weak right here, so I'll go to a burn tool and I'll burn shadows. Make my brush a lot smaller. Maybe zoom in a little closer here and take that down just a little stronger. So those blacks are just jumping out a little bit better in there. They still have good detail in it, but they're jumping out a little better. Go back to my spot healing brush for a little bit more healing. Okay, now what we have for the client now is a clean club shot on the white, but we also have the ability to put this on another color. So let's go back to our layers panel for a second, and we'll create one more. We can go back and look at the difference. Let's bring the original one of these other layers up for a second and see the before and after just on what this guy looks like. I'll turn this retouched version of the club over. You can see how it's got a little more brightness on it. We cleaned up a lot of the detail, a lot of the dirt in there. Sorry, and we turn that on and off. You can see what the difference on what's going on there. Let's turn that off, and we're going to put another layer right above the white layer here, blank layer, and let's go to our foreground color, and we'll pick a nice blue color and hit OK, and we'll pick our background color, maybe a black. So we got a blue to black. Let's go to our gradient tool. We'll pick a linear gradient, 100%, and we'll make sure we're on the right layer. And let's just see a couple looks here what we could do. Come that down a little bit. Now let's do a little bit. Let's try this direction here, about the opposite direction. I like that, something like that. We could also do a circular gradient. We can hit this one and start from the center and work our way out. That's kind of nice too. It gives the client a couple of choices. So now the client has multiple uses. If they got like a beauty shot, they could put their logo and type in here, and then they have their standard catalog shot ready to go. Either way, we've given the client exactly what they need for a nice clean catalog shot of metal, and we're making sure that the metal does not really go above that 240 to 245 level of luminosity on that 8-bit scale of 0 to 255. We want to make sure that that 0 to 255 level is really watched all the way through the process, so that when it goes into CMYK, that 240 to 245 is going to give just enough detail to put some dots on the paper, but be nice, bright, have a lot of contrast. Our black areas here are in the 20s, which is going to give us plenty of detail there. We're going to be set for reproduction in the CMYK or going to web, going to a poster, going to any use the client has. They've got multiple usages out of one file.